Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a Vote as People is a Hopeless People candidate forum hosted by the Beta Eta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and the Sigma Sigma Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. My name is Wendell Oliver. I'm the chairman for the Vote as People is a Hopeless People program here in Oklahoma City. We are excited to be presenting this very important forum. We know that this election has been deemed as the most important election of our lifetime, and that is right. But that is how we should think of every election, from the city council all the way to the presidency. Our hope is that by the end of the forum, you have a better insight into the candidates and will be able to make an informed decision.
My name is Bailey Perkins. I'm one of the moderators for tonight's forum. It is a mission of both Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated to help educate our community about civic engagement. Typically, we would be face-to-face to host this forum, but due to the pandemic, we are presenting this to you in a pre-recorded virtual format. For full transparency, this forum was recorded on September 19th and September 25th. To accommodate all participants. Candidates' answers have not been edited.
My name is Tamya Cox-Touré, and I will also be serving as your moderator for this evening. The format for this evening goes as follows. Candidates will have 2 minutes for an opening statement, followed by questions from the moderators. Each candidate for the office will be asked the same questions. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond. Time limits will be strictly enforced. Candidates will receive 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop warnings. Questions were prepared by the committee members with collaboration from the community.
Thank you to the men of Alpha Phi Alpha and the women of Alpha Kappa Alpha for inviting me here tonight to talk about the issues facing Oklahoma and our communities. Right now, our nation and our state are facing an unprecedented health and economic crisis. A crisis of injustice is hurting our Black communities and communities of color, and a political crisis that's telling us that our nation is too divided to do anything about these issues. That's not true. I know we can find common ground and deliver relief that is timely, targeted, and transparent to the communities most impacted by these issues. People often ask me why I ran for Congress, why I serve, and why I'm not afraid to shake things up. The answer for me is simple. Because showing up for our friends and neighbors and treating each other the way we want to be treated is the Oklahoma standard. Because as a fifth-generation Oklahoman, red dirt runs in my veins, and my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents taught me that showing up for each other, standing up for what's right, speaking up against injustice is the Oklahoma standard, is who we are and who we should strive to be. They taught me that when you see a problem, you don't complain about it, you get to work to fix it. I show up every day because Oklahoma is worth the work. And during my first term, I've held a record number of town halls to connect with Oklahomans and make their voices heard in Congress. I've fought to expand access to quality, affordable health care, to fund public education, and to invest in jobs and economic opportunity for all Oklahomans. Oklahoma deserves a member of Congress who will stand up to their party and to the White House. And I believe in building bridges, not walls, to get things done for Oklahoma. It is the honor of my life to represent Oklahoma's 5th District in Congress because I work for you, and I'll never forget that.
Our first topic for today's discussion will be about the economy. The economic downturn has harmed workers and small businesses. We've seen a record number of unemployment claims filed due to the pandemic and the downturn of the oil and gas industry. It's taken months for some Oklahomans to even receive their benefits. We're seeing prominent businesses within communities close their doors, rates of eviction rises, and an increasing number of people seeking food assistance at pantries because it's so hard to make ends meet. What should be done as the pandemic continues to balance the needs of the economy and the people whose jobs have been lost due to the pandemic and as it hits the oil and gas industry.
I'm proud of the work that we've done in Congress to address the health and economic needs of our communities. We've passed 4 bipartisan relief packages out of Congress, including expanding unemployment insurance and benefits for individuals who work part-time or self-employed, small businesses, and much more. We've passed the PPP protection program to support small businesses, and I have continued to fight to ensure that Oklahomans who lost jobs through no fault of their own during this pandemic got the benefits they were entitled to. I've helped more than 100 small businesses, and I have not stopped my fight to get timely, targeted, and transparent relief into our communities. Just this week, with the work of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, we put out yet another roadmap to get that timely, targeted, and transparent relief that includes an expansion of unemployment benefits, additional support for WIC and other food services, funding for education, funding for state and local governments, and additional support for our small businesses. We have to come together, and we can do that with bipartisan efforts that recognize the needs of our communities. What we don't get to helping our communities is by pointing fingers and letting people fall into an us versus them mentality. That's why I will continue to fight for Oklahoma and for programs and resources that help every single Oklahoman. This is not the time for us to be pitted against each other. It's time for us to stand up for what's right. That is what I have done since the beginning of this pandemic, and what I will continue to do to support families and businesses across our state and make sure they get the help that they need.
Thank you so much. Our second question is related to healthcare. Back in June, voters addressed some of the healthcare gaps by approving Medicaid expansion. And Governor Stitt recently withdrew his proposal to overhaul the Medicaid program that would have included premiums, co-pays, and work requirements for this expanded population. And of course, we are still in the midst of a pandemic. How will you address the healthcare needs of Oklahomans and the rest of the country?
Since my election, I've worked to expand access to quality, affordable health care for Oklahomans, to make sure that more Oklahomans, not less, are covered. I supported strongly since the very beginning expanding Medicaid to get more than 200,000 Oklahomans access to the insurance that they so desperately need, to protect people with pre-existing conditions and to lower the cost of prescription drugs that has far too many Oklahoma families making the unacceptable choice between putting food on their table and getting the medicine that they need. And that's a difference between myself and my opponent, who did not support Medicaid expansion and who did support a plan that would take the decisions out of the hands of Oklahoma families and put it into the hands of out-of-state insurance companies. We don't need extreme solutions to get Oklahomans more health care and the support that they need. What we need is someone that's going to show up and fight for them. That's why during this pandemic, I am proud to support provisions under the CARES Act and our other relief packages that provided free testing and treatment for Oklahomans regardless of their insurance coverage. And why I introduced a bill to cap out-of-pocket prescription drug costs for our seniors. And why I have and will continue to stand up for policies that include all of us rather than leaving more and more people behind. Because healthcare is a right, not a privilege reserved for the few. And when I go back to Congress in this coming year, I will continue to fight for Oklahomans and expanded access to quality, affordable healthcare for everyone.
Thank you. Our next issue is around social justice. Civil unrest. We're seeing conversations rise about police brutality, systemic and structural racism. We're also seeing protests and counter-protests, not only across the country, but within our own backyard. We're seeing racial tension on social media and with interactions with one another. What should be done to foster reconciliation, restore public trust, and bring about justice? What is your response to the Black Lives Matter movement, and where do you stand on changes that are being demanded?
Let me be clear from the beginning. Black Lives Matter. And the protests we've seen across America this year in response to the tragic and unnecessary death of George Floyd and all of the other systemic issues that our country faces calls upon us to live up to the ideals of our nation, because no one should be targeted because of the color of their skin, and no one should be afraid to interact with our law enforcement because of the color of their skin and the fear of being killed or having other negative consequences. We have to address the issues of systemic racism, and we have to take a bipartisan path forward to do that. I'm proud that in the House I was able to support the Justice in Policing Act, which is an important step forward. It includes banning racial profiling, banning chokeholds, and putting in place a nationwide police misconduct database. And I'm also proud to have led the effort to reduce the fatal responses to individuals who are experiencing mental health crisis. Because 1 in 10 calls to police today is in response to someone who's in mental health crisis, and 1 in 4 people who are killed by police is because they're experiencing a mental health crisis. My bipartisan bill would provide training for police to be able to recognize, respond to, and de-escalate those situations, and is endorsed by organizations as broad-ranging as our Oklahoma City NAACP and Black Lives Matter, to the National Association on Mental Illness, and the National Tactical Officers Association. The bottom line is, these are difficult issues and difficult conversations that we need to have, but we need more than just talk. We have to take action, because Black Lives Matter, and addressing the systemic issues that our communities face is something that we need to do immediately.
Thank you. Our final question for tonight is on voter protection. Recently, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified about Russia's interference in this upcoming election. President Trump has also made remarks questioning the legitimacy of this election. We know that due to the pandemic, many Oklahomans will be exercising their right to vote by mailing in their ballots. Turnout is also expected to be record-breaking this election. With all of this, should Oklahomans feel confident that our elections will be protected? And what steps can you take to ensure the integrity of our election system?
Such a timely and important question. Let's start with Oklahoma. Yes, Oklahomans can be confident that their votes will be counted and their voices will be heard at the ballot box. We have a system, an absentee ballot system, that is proven. It has been used for years. It is verifiable and it is reliable. And Oklahomans can count on that. And it's true that we have had other foreign actors and bad actors, Russia and other state actors, that have attempted to interfere in our elections. But let's be clear, voting and elections are not a partisan issue. They're one of our most basic and fundamental rights guaranteed to us under the Constitution. And to throw that into question for partisan gain is unconscionable. In Congress, I have introduced legislation to secure our elections, bipartisan legislation that would hold bad actors accountable, that would prohibit foreign countries from interfering in our elections. And I fought to provide additional funding to our election systems to make sure that our states and communities have the resources they need. As I said, Oklahoma's system is one of the most safe and reliable in the country. Our absentee ballot process has been proven time and again. One of the most powerful methods of disenfranchisement that has been used over the years to keep people from the ballot box is the idea that our voices won't be heard and our votes won't be counted. So we cannot let people convince us that it is not worth it to speak up. I will continue to fight for funding and to fight against foreign actors and bad actors from interfering in our elections. But in the meantime, we have to make sure that we show up and we make our voices heard at the ballot box. And in Oklahoma, we know we can count on that.
Thank you, Kendra Orrin. You will now have 1 minute for your closing statement.
I ran for office on the promise that I would fight for all Oklahomans, regardless of who they are, where they live, or their political party. And I am proud to say that I have done just that. I've helped thousands of Oklahomans with unemployment, with small business loans, with veterans benefits, and with Social Security. I have built bipartisan solutions on police reform, COVID-19 relief, improving military housing, and much more, because that's what it takes to help Oklahomans. Because I know that we have to bring Democrats and Republicans together, that we have more that unites us than divides us, and that this seat doesn't belong to a party or a person, it belongs to Oklahomans. So here's my promise to you today. I have only started. I will continue to show up every day for Oklahoma, to stand up for what's right, and to shake things up the way that they work in Washington with fresh ideas and bipartisan approach. Because I will always put people over politics, and I will always fight for Oklahoma, and I hope I can count on your vote in November.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Alpha Phi Alpha for putting on tonight's forum. My name is Stephanie Bice. I am a wife, a mother, a fourth-generation Oklahoman, and I currently serve in the Oklahoma State Senate. And I think my time in the Oklahoma State Senate has uniquely prepared me to go to Congress and hit the ground running day one and work hard to ensure Oklahoma continues to grow and thrive. But even before my time in the Oklahoma State Senate, I was a small business owner. I helped grow business in this community. I own my own digital marketing agency here in Oklahoma City, and I worked for the family business, doing financial oversight, business strategy, and marketing. Because of that experience, I know what it's like to sign the front and the back of a paycheck. And I understand the challenges that small businesses face to grow their business. The fact that my time in the Senate, I've researched and written hundreds of pieces of legislation. I have read and considered thousands of bills that impact our state. I have listened to my constituents, and I've listened to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I'll do that same thing in Congress. I'll do what I've done, tackle big problems and find solutions that grow our economy for hardworking Oklahomans. In my time in the Senate, I was able to bring multiple industries and both parties together to pass groundbreaking legislation that ended a 57-year monopoly in our state and brought thousands of jobs to Oklahoma. I believe that my business background, combined with my legislative experience, will prepare me to hit the ground running and work hard for Oklahomans in Congress. I hope to earn your vote on November the 3rd.
Thank you. Our first question is regarding the economy. The economic downturn has harmed workers and small businesses. We've seen a record number of unemployment claims filed due to the pandemic and the downturn of the oil and gas industry. It's taken months for some Oklahomans to even receive their benefits. We're seeing prominent businesses within communities close their doors, rates of evictions rise, and an increasing number of people seeking food assistance at pantries because it's so hard to make ends meet. What should be done as the pandemic continues to balance the needs of the economy and the people whose jobs have been lost due to the pandemic and hits to the oil and gas industry?
You're absolutely correct. Oklahoma is in a unique position because we have been hit on two fronts with COVID-19 and with the downturn in oil and gas. My husband is in the oil and gas industry, so I see it firsthand. We have to continue to promote the policies that have kept this economy going. Things like the Paycheck Protection Program. That has given the businesses that are in desperate need of help, financial help, the ability to keep going. There is still money that is sitting on the table that Congress has access to that we should try to reopen the Paycheck Protection Program and allow businesses to apply for those. I think the other thing that we should be doing is making sure that we are looking to bring opportunities to Oklahoma. There are a lot of businesses across the country that are actually growing because technology has moved to allow for things like telehealth. And there's opportunities for us to use that technology in a really unique way and grow businesses rather than contraction. I also think that our economy is of paramount. Without a growing, thriving economy, without people working, we're going to see continued downturns. We're blessed in Oklahoma to have 5.7% unemployment. We've been able to weather this storm, but we have to continue in Congress to promote the policies that have kept us going for the last 6 months.
Thank you. Our next topic is healthcare. Back in June, voters addressed some of the healthcare gaps by improving Medicaid expansion, and Governor Stitt recently withdrew his proposal to overhaul the Medicaid program that would have included premiums, co-pays, and work requirements for this expanded population. And of course, we're still in the midst of a pandemic. How will you address the healthcare needs of Oklahomans and the rest of the country?
Well, healthcare is in crisis in this country. We have seen, with the passage of Obamacare, a significant increase in our premiums, in high deductibles, in prescription drug prices. And it is a bipartisan issue. It is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. We need to continue to make sure that we are providing transparency in healthcare, looking at technology and utilizing those resources to drive down cost. This healthcare package, the Obamacare, was sold as an Affordable Care Act, and I think Oklahomans have seen different. But there are ways to help our community make sure that they have access to affordable, quality healthcare and allowing them to continue to choose their physician, and also to ensure that we're providing coverage for pre-existing conditions. Those things are very important. I will work in Congress in a bipartisan fashion to ensure that we're doing those very things. Competition in the healthcare industry drives down costs. And with the passage of Obamacare, unfortunately, we have fewer health choice options in Oklahoma right now. Let's open up the marketplace again. Let's find reasonable, common sense solutions to this healthcare situation that we have and work for Oklahoma.
Our next question involves civil unrest and social justice. We're seeing conversations rise about police brutality, systemic and structural racism. We're seeing protests and counter-protests, not only across the country, but within our backyard. We're seeing racial tension on social media and within their interactions with one another. What should be done to foster reconciliation, restore public trust, and bring about justice? What is your response to the Black Lives Matter movement, and where do you stand on the changes that are being demanded?
Well, first, Black Lives Matter. But I think that we've also seen people take that message and twist it into something that it's not, twist it into violence and rioting. I support peaceful protests on this issue. We actually saw a few weeks ago a peaceful protest by a group from the Tower Theater to the state capitol, bringing awareness to the situation. This is a serious issue, and we need to have conversations with our community to find solutions to the challenges that we have. We need to bring people together, sit down, break bread, and have those tough discussions. There are lots of things that you can do for things like making sure that police have the funding that they need and the training that they need. And I also think that we need to have a police force that is reflective of our communities. That's not happening enough right now. We need to be active in recruiting our minorities, whether it is African Americans, Latinos, women. All of those need to be present and active in the community. And that'll really help foster relationships, building the trust that's needed to make sure that the people in our community feel respected and welcomed, and we see a decrease in the tension that is currently being experienced in the country right now.
And our last question is around voter protection. Recently, FBI Director Christopher Wray testified about Russia's interference in this upcoming election. President Trump has also made remarks questioning the legitimacy of this election. We know that due to the pandemic, many Oklahomans will be exercising their right to vote by mailing in their ballots. Turnout is also expected to be at record-breaking this election. With all of this, should Oklahomans feel confident that our elections will be protected? And what steps can you take to ensure the integrity of our election system?
This is a great question. And as a member of the state Senate, I have the pleasure of overseeing the state election board for a couple of years. And so I became very familiar with Oklahoma's election process. And I am happy to tell voters that the election process in our state is one of, if not the best in the entire country. We do not have a universal mail-in ballot process, so everyone isn't automatically mailed a ballot. You request it, and in Oklahoma, we have a security requirement that asks for a notary to notarize your ballot, or given the pandemic and health concerns, we've also allowed for a copy of your state-issued ID or a voter identification card to be sent in with your ballot instead of a notary requirement. These are really important pieces that ensure the integrity of our election. And unfortunately, there have been several parties recently that have filed legislation, not only on the state level, but on the federal level, to try to reduce the integrity and security of our elections by challenging the notary requirement and challenging the ID law. You know, Oklahoma voters passed ID requirements many years ago because they felt it was important. And I want to continue to make sure that our elections are secure and safe, and that we're able to confidently announce those victors at the end of the night. And I feel great about where Oklahoma stands on the election issue.
Thank you. You may now give your closing remarks.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me this evening. You know, I have been a proven leader in the Oklahoma State Senate, and I will do the same thing in Washington. From bipartisan legislation on important criminal justice reform to increasing teacher pay from 49th in the country to 27th, and cutting government bureaucracy and spending. I've listened to my constituents, and I have made the tough decisions to put Oklahoma first. I give you my word, you won't get rhetoric from me, you will get results. I ask for your support and your vote on November the 3rd. For more information, you can visit biceforcongress.com.
Our first office up will be candidates for Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office. We flipped a coin, and Tommie Johnson will go first. Tommie Johnson, please go ahead with your opening statement.
All right. My name is Tommie Johnson III. I'm a career law enforcement officer. Started my career in 2012 at the University of Oklahoma, where I was able to serve as a dignitary, where I was able to be a supervisor over a multi-jurisdictional team that took care and cared for people during the OU football games. I wanted more responsibility. I wanted my career to blossom. I wanted to experience more. I wanted to be exposed to more. So in 2015, I moved to the City of Norman Police Department, where I've had a wonderful career and God has truly blessed me. I've served on the bargaining committee. We lobby our pay and benefits with the city, so we come up with the contract and we present that to the city for the fiscal year. I've been on the hiring board. I've been on recruiting. I've been on the uniform committee. I was also selected by my chief to accept the Centennial Award on behalf of the department. So our department turned 100, and I accept that award, and that means a lot to me because it truly shows what he thinks of my leadership and what I could bring. I'm blessed to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Regardless how voters decide in November, Oklahoma County will have its first Black sheriff. This will also be a time where calls for defunding the police have made its way into reasonable conversations, and distrust and outright fear of law enforcement in the Black community is at an all-time high. What steps will you take to build community confidence in your department and hold bad officers accountable? What strategies would you develop to improve relationships with communities of color?
Okay. So first things first, for accountability's sake, the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office does not have body cams. In the year 2020, with what we're seeing the landscape across our country, body cams are very important because that is an accurate representation of what happens on each and every incident. Now, I've looked into this. I've done a lot of research on how we can achieve this, and I've come up with a program. So for about $150,000, we can start the program to get these body cams up and running. And for about $65,000 every year after that, we'll be able to continue the process. Now, going out and spreading my message to the good people of Oklahoma County, they have really bought in. They understand the weight of body cams and what they bring to our department. So I've had a group said that they will help fund me in this endeavor. So that is very big when you talk about not having to use the budget to achieve this. Secondly, restructuring the organization. So when we look at accountability, I've asked Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office if they have an IA, an official IA, an internal investigations, internal affairs that look into allegations on officers. With the body cams, with having a legitimate IA department there to hold our officers accountable, I believe that that will start paving the way with the transparency piece that our community so desperately needs. We also have an infrastructure in place through the COP office and the SROs, that's the community-oriented police office, and the school resource officers. They are in tandem. I have ideas that I want them to roll out and speak to students at schools, also get engaged in the community with the mayors and the city managers, and we will have events called Ask a Cop so that y'all can pick our brains, we can have a brain trust, and as a community, we can work together to solve these issues.
Thank you. For decades, the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department has operated the OKC jail. The community is very aware of the deplorable conditions at the jail. The newly formed jail trust has hired a jail administrator to take over operations as of July 1st. Was this the right decision, or do you believe the Sheriff's Department should have continued the operations of the jail?
I believe in the jail trust. I believe it will start with good intentions, like all things. When you look at it, the sheriff was relinquished of his duties of the jail due to mismanagement. That is a viable reason to say we need a collection of people whose minds are solely focused on how do we push this entity to a better place. The Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, you're right, some very deplorable conditions. So we have employees that work there, we have people that go there. And, you know, I believe in jail being hard. It should be hard for people because you earned your way there, but it shouldn't be cruel and unusual. So I do believe in the trust, and I have faith that we can get some things accomplished. Now, as far as my stance with the trust, obviously, I am no longer in charge of the jail, so that will allow me to be very strategic and specific on providing a service to a community that so desperately needs it when it comes to safety and security. But I do have a vote. I do have a vote on the board, and I will do all the research to ensure that we get this to a better place. Because, like I said, it should be hard, but it shouldn't be cruel and unusual.
As you said, the sheriff will serve as a trustee on the newly created jail trust, the entity that oversees the management of the jail. Recently, the county commissioner's office, in a controversial decision, gave the trust $40 million from the state's CARES Act funding. It was thought this money would go toward helping Oklahomans who are facing some of the most devastating economic crises in their lives. But instead, it will go toward infrastructure of the jail, such as a new lobby. As a member of this trust, how will you advocate for this money to be spent?
Well, very tough because you're pulled in two different directions, at least I am. When you look at COVID at the jail and how it has ran rapid, and even though we have people in jail, their life still matters. So making sure they're protected from this virus that we are trying to do as much as we can to protect ourselves and our families from, I think that is important. So as long as the money goes to them to keep this place safe, I'm okay. But when you look at how the transaction kind of came about, I think you need more people in the room. You need more heads at the table to discuss where all this money goes. Should we have gotten all the money? I don't necessarily think so. I think we should have, like I said, I think it came down to we should have more heads at the table to really discuss this further. But if their intentions is to keep people safe within the county jail, that's a positive thing, and I'm for that.
What's your strategy for diversifying leadership within the sheriff's office and recruiting more Black law enforcement officers?
That's a great question. So when I was at the City of Norman Police Department, I went to my chief because I am a fan of tattoos. I love them. It's an artistic expression that I really love to indulge in. I told him that, one, having tattoos does not make me a thug, does not make me a negative person, and that I can have them and still be a valuable piece to the department. So what I did was I looked at how not exploring tattoos and I looked at how not allowing us to have them affected us as a department. One, it stopped recruiting. When you look at anybody now today, tattoos are so widely accepted, everybody has them. So people were getting kicked out of our recruitment process. And I went to them with this data and said, if we do this, we can up our recruitment tremendously. I brought facts. I was able to, one, lobby to get more qualified officers from the military, from the community, but to attack, well, not to attack, but to try to create diversity within the Black community. The one thing I want to do is dreads. Right now, to work at any police department, to be a male, you have to have your hair shaved, a close cut, and dreads are a cultural thing. We allow girls and accommodate women to pull their hair back. Obviously, it has to be tasteful and natural color. Why can't we allow that for men with dreads who are just expressing a cultural expression? That's what we will do to, one, encourage people from the area, encourage Black people to get into the police department, because I believe that is one thing holding them back from saving their own communities or being a protector of their own communities.
Thank you. And our last question is around deadly force. Please describe your views on the use of continuum. Force continuum? How does an officer go from verbal command to brutal force? And what should be changed on the use of deadly force in the police, within the system?
What I would say, speaking for the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, we need more of an approach. We need more tools to use, so it's not just either hands-on or lethal force. I believe we need tasers, we need the beanbag guns, we need other options. So that's not exactly where you go. Also, you need training, more training in these areas, in these tough situations, so that we can fall back on training. A lot of officers are just undertrained. If we really increase our training, get better tools, I really think we can make a break in it. I think we can do very well. I come from a department where we pride ourselves in training and we pride ourselves in how we send our officers out prepared to do the job. We don't have these issues. I know that if I bring what I have, what I am used to, what I'm accustomed to, and what I have learned coming up in a police department like the University of Oklahoma and now the City of Norman, bring that to Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office, we can have a positive effect. Once again, this is a very big election. As I told Wayland when I came in, I am extremely honored to share this conversation with him. I think this is awesome for the community. I think it shows how far we've come. I think we can really make strides through this. I'm gonna tell you what, even though I'm a Republican and I understand in my Black community that's not the party of choice to select, I strongly urge you to consider me on November 3rd. I have ideas, concrete ideas backed by facts and data to push Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office to a better place. You just have to look past party affiliation and look into your heart and say, who can do this job better? Who has the ideas? Who can provide better leadership and a fresh perspective that we definitely need in Oklahoma County Sheriff's Office? Tommie Johnson III, and I'm that guy.
Let me start by expressing my gratitude to the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity for planning this organization and this opportunity to speak. Creating a platform that professionally informs our public is what we call in my business a clue of great leadership. And right now, our community needs and demands great leadership. I am Wayland Cubit. I'm a 24-year veteran of law enforcement, and I am running for Oklahoma County Sheriff. The bottom line objective for the Sheriff of Oklahoma County is public safety. Creating safer communities can no longer be reduced to a single tagline, because crime does not happen in a vacuum. Crime on the surface may seem simple, but it is much more complex than most people realize. That's why I have dedicated much of my professional career to creating juvenile intervention programs, gang prevention programs, and diversion programs. And I've also served as a law enforcement trainer on multiple levels. Every sheriff candidate will tell you that they will reduce crime and increase visibility. Those are very basic things, and I will do that as well. But I want to do much more than that. I want to do more than just reduce crime. I want to eliminate crime. And I know that's a bold vision, and I know that that statement is filled with a lot of hope, but my career in leadership has a history full of lofty goals. And that's why I want to see a thriving, flourishing community. This election is different. Our community is much more involved and informed. And you no longer want a leader who just tells you what they would do. You want a leader that knows what they are doing. You want to know what they've been doing. And not only that, I've done that in many areas of law enforcement, but I've also had many hours of community service right here in Oklahoma County. So I'm looking forward to your questions, and I look forward to earning your vote for Oklahoma County.
Thank you. Our first question is, regardless of how voters decide in November, Oklahoma County will have its first Black sheriff. This will also be at a time where calls for defunding the police have made its way into reasonable conversations, and distrust and outright fear of law enforcement in the Black community is at an all-time high. What steps will you take to build community confidence in your department and hold bad officers accountable? What strategies would you develop to improve relationships within communities of color?
Well, one of the first things that I will do as Oklahoma County Sheriff is we have to identify what policies that we have that are creating some of this distrust. And so I'll put all of our policies online and accessible to the public. I'll introduce body cameras and a body camera program into the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department. They don't have that right now. And not only that, as I will lean on my experience of community building for the last 13 years, I've been in the northeast side of Oklahoma City and the south side of Oklahoma City, in the most high crime areas, the most diverse communities in our county. And I've built trust with them. They call me all the time, not just about crime, but they call me about personal matters too. Not just me, the members in the unit, the members of the people that I lead are getting those same phone calls. We're not just doing a us and them type of policing, we're doing a we type of policing. Everybody has a stake in their own safety. We want to be there, not warriors in the community, we want to create guardians of the community. And so that would be my goal. And those first steps, the ones that are easy, low-hanging fruit, is body cameras, transparency with our policy, and then creating structure and oversight to make sure that our officers are abiding by those policies and that structure.
For decades, the Oklahoma County Sheriff Department has operated the OKC jail. The community is very aware of the deplorable conditions at the jail. The newly formed jail trust hired a jail administrator to take over operations as of July 1. Was this the right decision, or do you believe the Sheriff's Department should have continued the operation of the jail?
Well, the sheriff has been in charge of single operation of the jail for more than 25 years. And we know that almost since that place opened, it has been difficult to manage, difficult to maintain control, and conditions have decreased year after year after year. I was very much in favor of a trust because a team of people will always do better than a single person. And so I would do what I can to work with the existing jail trust to bring those conditions to something that all Oklahomans can be proud of. I mean, we may not like the jail, but we need one. We may not see ourselves ever going to jail, but we might know somebody that they go there or have to use that service. And so there's no such thing as a throwaway person in our community. Everybody has value, whether they recognize it or not. And so it would be up to me, along with the other members of the jail trust, to get that to a position that is humanizing and provides dignity to everybody that has to use it.
The sheriff will serve as a trustee on the newly created jail trust, the entity that oversees the management of the jail. Recently, the county commissioner's office, in a controversial decision, gave the trust $40 million from the state's CARES Act funding. It was thought that this money would and should go towards helping Oklahomans who are facing some of the most devastating economic crises in their lives. But instead, it will go towards infrastructure of the jail, such as a new lobby. As a member of the trust, how will you advocate for this money to be spent?
Right. Well, I'm not aware that it's been allocated for new lobbies or other things outside of the COVID relief. But I know that the COVID is really bad in the jail. And so I know that there's a certain amount of money that has to be allocated to take care of that situation. Whether or not it takes 40 million to do it, I don't know. But I'm from the old school where the teacher used to say, show me your work, which you had to put your things on paper to show how you came up with the answer, right? And until I am able to see how, line by line, how that money will be spent and whether it fits every category of COVID, I'm not in favor of it. But I do know a big bucket of that money needs to go to corporate relief and it needs to be allocated for the jail. I'm just not so sure all 40 million of it does.
What's your strategy for diversifying leadership within the sheriff's office and recruiting more Black law enforcement officers?
Well, I can tell you I've been in law enforcement for almost 25 years, and it has never been easy to recruit minorities. That's African Americans, people of color, and women. And we're in the most trying, most challenging time in law enforcement and in our country right now. So I don't suspect that's going to get easier just because you have a Black sheriff. And so it'd be my job to look for talent, to personally recruit, personally invest, like I have been for the last 13 years, investing in young people, to try to get them interested in this profession. I'm also really, really encouraged by the fact that we have 2 African-American candidates right now that might also spark the interest and inspire young people to actually want to seek not only this office that we are seeking, but just to get in the profession in general. So it will not be easy, so no big promises, but there will be a try.
And our final question, describe your views on the use of continuum. How does an officer go from verbal command to brutal force? And what should be changed on the use of deadly force policy?
Right, so I think your question is for the use of force continuum, is that you're asking for the, right? And so the use of force continuum is, the use of force actually starts from the time an officer shows up on the scene. And what we're required to do is the minimal force necessary to effect arrest, right? And so I believe that's still going to be the standard no matter what. We have to do that, but we can introduce other steps along the continuum, which we are doing now. So we can do training and then more training to reinforce that training. What I'm talking about is de-escalation training. We're talking about less lethal weapons, like some officers have tasers, not all do. I also would advocate that more officers will be trained in CIT, crisis intervention training, mental health training. Right now, a certain bucket of officers have gone and gotten that training, but not every officer has gotten that training. And so what we're hearing now is that our citizens are asking for more accountability. We're asking for more options. And so more option means more training for us, and not just one-time training. I'm talking about training and scenario-based training, and then another time of training to reinforce what you've been learning. Not on just a one time and you got it, but over and over and over. So there's a certification, and then there's a recertification to know that as things change, as our community change, that we keep up with those changes.
You may now go ahead with your 1-minute closing statement.
Right. Thank you so much again for this opportunity. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you as police officers. I really appreciate it. It has been my lifelong goal to do just what I'm doing, serve the people of Oklahoma County. I knew at 12 years old that I wanted to be a police officer, and I've lived out that dream. I've been called to do more with my knowledge, my ability, my skill, and I feel absolutely honored to be in a position to be able to be your next sheriff. You know, you have to look at these 2 candidates, both good guys, both law enforcement professionals, but who has the knowledge, the skill, ability, and experience to do the job? That's what we're looking at here. 24 years of law enforcement experience, 24 years of doing prevention and intervention and diversion. My line of thinking actually fits what we're looking to do right now. We have to reimagine law enforcement. We can no longer change culture, we have to build culture. And with your vote for me on November the 3rd, we'll start that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the gentleman of Alpha Phi Alpha for inviting me today to share information about State Question 805. My name is Jacqueline Blocker, and I am the Engagement Director for Oklahomans for Criminal Justice Reform, and we are helping with efforts on the Yes on 805 campaign. State Question 805 is an initiative that will be on the ballot in November, and we encourage all of you to go out and vote yes. Sentence enhancements are resulting in harsh and unfair sentences in Oklahoma. And because of this practice, a second conviction of breaking into a shed can result in a life sentence. State Question 805 would end the practice of adding years to a person's prison sentence for a non-violent offense because they had a prior non-violent conviction. If State Question 805 passes, people who are convicted of non-violent crimes could be sentenced up to the maximum allowable time in prison for the current crime, but would not receive additional time in prison beyond the maximum sentence because of their past convictions. It is important to note that State Question 805 would not apply to people convicted of violent crimes or sex crimes. I'm going to make it clear, State Question 805 will not be a free pass for anybody. As I said, an individual who was convicted of a nonviolent crime could still be sentenced up to the maximum for that particular crime, but no longer will there be excessive sentences piled on beyond that maximum sentence. All of the research and evidence shows that these excessive sentences are not making us safer, but they are wasting taxpayer dollars. Our Oklahoma prisons are overcrowded, and we hand down some of the longest sentences in the nation. Oklahomans currently spend 79% longer for nonviolent drug crimes and 69% longer for nonviolent property crimes. These low-level nonviolent crimes and the excessive sentences that are being handed down for them are contributing to our overcrowded prisons, which are not making us safer and are costing and wasting taxpayer dollars. When State Question 805 passes, almost $200 million in savings will be realized. These will be savings that could be reinvested in rehabilitation, mental health, substance abuse, victim and survivor services. I want to read off a few examples of some of the excessive sentences that are occurring right now. The State Question would end. These are some of the examples. Bruce, 26, served in the Army and was sentenced to 17 years for pawning a stolen laptop. Barry, 52, serving 20 years in prison for stealing a lawnmower from a tractor supply company. Amy, 30, sentenced to 15 years for stealing basic necessities and children's toys at a Walmart. Coy, 39, sentenced to 35 years in prison for writing $525.29 worth of fraudulent checks. Mary, 59, serving a 20-year sentence for writing $850 worth of fraudulent checks. And the list goes on and on and on. Since I've been in this fight, I know of at least over 40 life without parole sentences for nonviolent drug offenses that have been commuted over the last year. State Question 805 will save Oklahoma taxpayer dollars and that can be reinvested in education, rehabilitation, and services to help people with mental health and substance abuse. State Question 805 provides individuals with a true second chance. Instead of someone having to be served time over and over again for a prior mistake, State Question 805 will afford people a true second chance. Nobody should be judged for the rest of their life for their worst mistake, for their worst day. And that's what's happening now. If you ever in the past have been convicted of a nonviolent crime and you subsequently commit another crime, right now, decades can be added onto your sentence far beyond the maximum sentence for that crime. State Question 805 will end the senseless use of repeat sentencing penalties, save taxpayer dollars, and ultimately make Oklahoma a safer and stronger state. I encourage each and every one of you to go to yeson805.org to get more information and to read some of the stories of some of the amazing people who have suffered from the excessive sentences that State Question 805 will stop. You can also follow the campaign at YesOn805 on Twitter and Instagram and on Facebook. Again, I'd like to thank the gentlemen of Alpha Phi Alpha for giving State Question 805 the opportunity to share a little bit about why it is the right next step for criminal justice reform in Oklahoma. Thank you.
This concludes our candidate forum. We would like to extend a very special thank you to the candidates for sharing their perspectives this evening. We encourage viewers to continue to learn more about each candidate by visiting their websites and social media, and most importantly, contacting them and asking them the questions that you may have. Please remember that the deadline to register to vote is October 9th, and the deadline to request an absentee ballot to vote by mail is October 27th.
You should be discussing your voting plans now. Are you voting early or by mail? Are you going to drop your absentee ballot off in person or put in the mailbox? Has your polling location changed? Are you anticipating long lines? Do you need to bring a chair or comfortable shoes? These are all the questions you should be thinking about right now. So make sure you talk with your friends and family and discuss your voting plan. Representative John Lewis said, "Ours is not the struggle of one day, 1 week, or 1 year. Ours is not the struggle of one judicial appointment or presidential term. Ours is the struggle of a lifetime, or maybe even many lifetimes. And each one of us is, in every generation, must do our part. One way we can do our part is at the ballot box. I hope you get out and vote."
My name is Melvin Gaines, president of the Beta Eta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. We, the brothers of the Beta Eta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, would like to thank the candidates for the United States Congressional Seat 5, Ms. Stephanie Bice, Ms. Kendra Horn, and candidates for the Oklahoma County Sheriff's position, Mr. Wayland Cubit and Mr. Tommie Johnson III, for participating in our program. This event was held to give the community a chance to listen to all the candidates and become better informed on where they stand on the issues that matters most to you, the voter. We hope that you all listen very intently to the questions that were given to the candidates, but more importantly, listen to their answers. I would like to thank the Beta Eta Lambda chapters of Voteless People is a Hopeless People Committee and the ladies of Sigma Sigma Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated for partnering with us in this event. I can't say enough, but thanks to Tabernacle Baptist Church and Pastor Larry Crudup for allowing us to use his facilities once again. Lastly, I would like to say that this upcoming election is one of the most important elections in our lifetime. So very important that we all exercise our right to vote. Let's remember, elections has consequences. So don't sit on the sidelines, participate in the process. Good night and God bless.